Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of our 40 days of community study. I am really excited about this week and about the subject matter for this week. It's reaching out together. As you heard Sunday in the message, we talked about the importance of teamwork in soul winning, and soul winning certainly is a team effort. And part of your team is with you today in this small group as we study together. There's a scripture that we've read and have been reading during our 40 days of community, 1 Corinthians 13 and 4. And in it, it makes a statement very succinctly. Love is kind. Love is kind. Now, when you think about kindness, it's not a feeling, it's an action. If you say somebody is kind, it's not because you feel like they would be kind, it's because they've done something that lets you know they are kind. So kindness is action, love is shown through kindness, and we are all about love and kindness and action as we go through the 40 days of community. In our community, through Trunk or Treat and community event, which comes up October 5th. By the way, if you haven't registered a trunk, register it today. And all of the other activities that we do, Second Saturday, Safe Harbor Community Services, where we feed and clothe and make sure that people who are going for job interviews have proper clothing to wear to the interview. All of that is action on our part that shows our love. So that we're not just up on Sunday saying, we love people. We actually are doing something that shows that we love. Love is kind. 1 John 3:18, the Living Bible says, let us stop just saying we love people. Let us really love them and show it by our actions. That's what 40 Days of Community is all about. Thank you. Thank you for your involvement. The response to our appeal to start new groups was unbelievable. You stepped up and you made this happen. And I thank you for it. And the community thanks you for it. We are in communion with God. We are in community with one another. That's what we're doing today with this group. And we are in our community to make a difference. So the primary focus for today's lesson is a story that Jesus, or from the life of Jesus. It was when he fed 5,000 men, not including women and children. We refer to it as the feeding of the 5,000, but for all intents and purposes, it was more than 5,000. It was just 5,000 men. Women and children were not included in the count. It was a huge crowd. And Jesus fed them. And I want to take that story and I want to grab some things from it, pull some truth out of it, just to share with you today. Because there are some things about this that I think are very powerful. Let's begin. So Jesus was teaching at a hillside meeting, and he had been teaching a long time. As a matter of fact, all day long. And it was now evening. It was time for dinner. They had skipped lunch. They had gone right through lunch. It was dinner time, and the people were hungry. And the disciples noticed this. Now, I've often thought and said a few times, like, I don't know who decided that the optimum time for church services was leading up to lunch on Sundays. Why would they do that to the preacher? I'm the preacher. I know that I'm the only thing standing between people and lunch. That's not a good situation to be in. But it does make you cognizant of the time you want to pay attention to it. And I try not to preach through lunch very much. But Jesus had done through lunch all the way to evening. The people are hungry. And so the disciples come to him and say, Lord, you're long-winded. You're long-winded today. and the people are starving. Send them away that they may eat. But Jesus said, I'm not going to send them away. You're going to feed them. And the disciples had to be saying, with what? We don't have anything to feed them. But they went through the crowd, even though they were very discouraged about and very negative about their ability to feed them. They're like, even if we found somebody's wages for a whole year, that wouldn't be enough to feed these people. What are we going to feed them? They go through the crowd and they find only one boy with one boy's lunch, 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Now, when you think of loaves, I think when somebody says a loaf of bread or loaves, I think of when I go to the supermarket and down the bread aisle, there's these loaves of bread about this big, sliced bread wrapped up in a plastic wrapper with a twist tie at the end. That's not what it was. It wasn't that big. It was 5 little buns or rolls, like a dinner roll, probably fit in the palm of your hand. That's how much bread, and 2 small fish. That's all they had. But they brought it to Jesus. Jesus blessed it, broke it, gave it back to them, and every time he handed them a handful, there was another handful. And every time somebody ate, there was enough for the next person to eat. And every time one serving went out, there was another serving. It was a powerful and unbelievable experience and an amazing miracle. And at the end of the story, there were 12 baskets left over. So let's go into the story and talk about how they did it, what the disciples did, and what we must do. By the way, you can find this in Mark chapter 6. If you'd like to read it further and study it more, that would be fantastic. But I want to talk to you about what they did. Number one, they recognized the need. Now, this is important. The Bible teaches us, Jesus said, for us to lift up our eyes and look at the fields and see that they are white and ready to harvest. So the very first thing you must do if you're going to see a miracle like the feeding of the 5,000, if 40 days of community is going to be successful, if we're going to reach out to others and win souls for the kingdom, we must first recognize the need. We must lift our eyes and look at the field and see it's white and ready to harvest. And I think you will agree, we need a harvest of souls in this hour that we're living in. The need is there. They're hungry, they have nothing. We've got to feed them. So let's go about our business and do it. The second thing I want to point out that they did is they began to take inventory. What do we have to work with? Take inventory. Well, unfortunately, they didn't have a lot to work with. But they produced what they had, brought it forth, and gave it to Jesus. And you know, I often feel like the disciples in Mark 6. I feel like I see the need. I recognize the need. I know the world needs Jesus. I know friends need Jesus. I know there are souls that need to be saved. But I'm looking at my talent, my ability, my availability, my time. And I'm like, I just don't have enough. I don't have enough. But when they pulled their resources and they got everything that they could gather, they brought it to Jesus. And that's kind of what we're doing in your group tonight. Take inventory and say, what do we have? Well, we each have a little bit of time. We each have at least a little bit of talent. We each have a little bit to offer. Let's pull it together. Let's give it to Jesus. And let's see what happens. Lord, I commit this to you. Then Jesus said to them, okay, now I have what you have to give. You've offered it to me. Now get organized. Get organized. He said, set the people down in companies of 50s and 100s. Get some organization so that you can distribute the miracle. He put them in groups. Isn't that fantastic? That's what he did. He put them in groups. And so they put them in groups, and it was through the groups that the miracle happened. And I honestly feel like for our church, small groups is going to be the way, the conduit to bring a great harvest of souls in. It'll be the way it happens. So get organized, get your group together, and decide this is how we will approach it. So after they got them organized, then Jesus began to break and distribute. And the disciples were ready to help at this point. At first, they didn't understand, what are we going to do? Now they're eager to help. So prepare your heart. That's the next thing you must do. Prepare your heart for what God is going to do through you in your life. Jesus used them to distribute it. Now, I want to tell you something. As he began to break, it multiplied, multiplied, multiplied. There's a scripture that points this out unbelievably. The Apostle Paul told the church in Corinth in 2 Corinthians 9 and 11. I'm reading from the Living Bible. It says this, watch this. God will give you much so that you can give away much. And when we take your gifts to those who need them, they will break out in thanksgiving and praise to God for your help. Isn't that powerful? God will use you to do it if you'll prepare your hearts. Then just be available. Be available. I've heard people say, God is not so much interested in ability as he is availability. Certainly, I believe that's the case. Be available. Be ready. And God will help you where you're weak. He will give you ability. So in your discussion time, think about the world God has placed you in. Who can you go to? Who needs to hear the gospel? Who needs to be invited into your group? Who needs to come along and do life with you? Who needs to show up to trunk or treat? Not just to bring their child to experience a wonderful experience, but maybe there's somebody that needs to participate. Oh, they're not a church member. I don't know if, yes, tell them, come, make a trunk and get ready and help us, because them getting involved could just be the way that you win them. But just make yourself available. And then think about, how can I do this in a way that I can reach out to others? And we will reach out together. Our group together will make a difference. I don't know how you want to do it, but however you do it, it'll be right if you just recognize the need, give what you have to Jesus, get organized, make yourself available, and prepare your hearts. It will work. I heard a story one time of a guy who showed up late for church on a Bible study night. And on his way in, he asked the usher, "Is the Bible study done?" And the usher responded, "The Bible study has been taught, but it isn't done yet. It's not done until people go out and do it. Don't just be hearers of the word, be doers also." That's what the Bible teaches. And so we take this little lesson in our study group together tonight, and let's take it to heart, reaching out together. A lesson from Jesus and the disciples when they fed the 5,000 men alone, not including women and children. Let us understand that we're not just saying we love the world, we are showing we love the world by our actions. God bless you. Have a great day.